fruits, ye shall know them.
Did you do it already? Oh, there it is. All right, welcome to By Their Fruits. My name is Jeremy Stone. I am your host of By Their Fruits. This is my co-host, John. How you doing, John?
I'm doing well, Jeremy. Hope everybody's doing well out there this evening. God bless each and every one of you.
Yeah, we got a special episode tonight. We got the boys from Sabbath at Midnight on here. If you haven't heard of their podcast, I suggest you go check it out because it's awesome. And you'll find very similar content to ours. And it's just good that we are able to connect with people who are like-minded and, love the Lord and do what they do for him. And I find that to be extremely important instead of just doing what you're doing for the follows and for the likes and for the money. You know what I mean? So this is special. In my opinion, it's special to me that we're able to connect with these guys because they're awesome. They have crazy stories and testimonies. They've interviewed a lot of great guests that even when we want on our show, dude. So tonight's gonna be awesome. We got a whole lot of stories to tell, a lot of testimony to tell. And we're doing it all for the Lord.
Yes, very much so, Jeremy.
Amen. Well, we'll start off with, doesn't matter, either one of you. Hey, we'll do this. Hey, Dominic, you are the co-host of the Sabbath at Midnight. Could you let the audience know, who you are, what you do, and how you came to the Lord?
Well, I'm, co-host now of the Sabbath at Midnight. Basically, kind of semi-retired right now. I spend my time mostly doing research on the ancient past and just trying to get more knowledge on the mysteries of what happened thereof, and trying to bring it to light, trying to bring truth into this world. There's so much out there that a lot of them are confused about what they believe, and then you get into the ancient aliens and that whole mythos and the worship of the Anunnaki to this day, by people like Billy Carson, who's a heretic. And but yeah, mostly I started down this path living on a ranch. And what I experienced out there was crazy. I mean, there's things out there that happen that when I reflect back to it, it's something that I don't think many people could handle it. Right. Things that happened out there, the noises, the creatures out there, the monsters, the devils, whatever were out there. And that brought me more into knowing Christ, because only through his name and by his name can you rebuke these things. And that's the truth. You're being demonically attacked, you call on the name of Christ. Even when it comes to these saucers in the sky, I've even used the name of Christ to rebuke them. They're not from his kingdom, I rebuke them. Because I don't want to go down the rabbit hole that angels are flying in saucers by Timothy Alberino, which is nonsense.
I agree.
There's just so much out there that.
And it's very close to Gnosticism. I didn't want to interrupt you, Dominic, but It's a very strong Gnostic train of thought right now that the flying saucers in and of themselves are angelic. You have the alien deception, right? Kind of like the ancient aliens, like you mentioned earlier, right? Then you have the false alien deception, which could be true, might not necessarily be false. It might just be the you have two different ways of looking at a biblical alien deception. One being kind of like the fallen angels, kind of like a demonic experience. But you also have another way of looking at it too as well, which would be that the governments of the world have a more advanced spacecraft, quote unquote, and it's kind of just for show to bring on kind of like a Project Bluebeam part of Armageddon, which might be a deception in and of itself. Right. So there's so many different ways that Satan and the New Age have kind of push the knowledge of the false knowledge, should I say, of aliens, outer dimensional beings, out of planet beings. We're going to find out what it is eventually. Mm-hmm. I would assume. I don't think that there are other planet beings myself personally, but there seems to be a lot of spiritual warfare going on right now to push people into multiple beliefs of what these things could be. Would you agree with that?
Well, I agree with it. And when you get some people out there, lecturers who are getting popularity, and people have horse blinders on, and they listen to everything they say as canon, they're going to start falling into that trap of deception where these entities and these saucers are angelic because they're tall white people. They look like almost human.
Yep.
With blonde hair and white hair and blue eyes. They're angels. You don't know if they're angels. Shouldn't be calling them angels and saucers. It's just stuff like that really, ticks me off. And this falls into the belief systems of the Roman Catholics of they would baptize these entities. I won't call them extraterrestrial because I don't believe they're from space.
I don't either.
Would you? No. Sorry to interrupt, but would you lean more towards interdimensional?
I do.
Okay, me too.
I believe they're interdimensional because, I've seen things in the sky myself. Lionel's seen stuff in the sky. These things are there, and they're gone. They blink out. Where did they go? At speed, or they just go step into another dimension? These are questions that we have. But when you look at deeper into this, look at people, lecturers like the one I just mentioned as an example. There's a passage in the Bible, I forgot exactly where it is, but it's talking when Christ says he's going to bring his lost sheep back into the fold, back into the flock. And this is the same thing that the Tom Horn's book, Exo Vaticana, he talks about these Jesuit Roman Catholics that believe that passage is saying that the lost sheep are these entities.
Yeah, that's true.
They want to call them extraterrestrial. And what it really means is that he's calling all his lost people, the Gentiles, even the people of Jewish descent, because not all of them believe in Christ. He's talking about the lost tribes that are spread out throughout the world, bringing everybody back into the fold, back into his flock. So, you got so many people out there twisting the biblical narrative to feed their needs, if it's money, if it's fame, if it's popularity, if it's likes, if it's follows, and all that stuff. And I'm just amazed at how many people get sucked down to that rabbit hole. There's so many other topics that we can talk about, but I'll let you get your line around.
All right, brother. Well, thank you for that. And I just wanted to let you know I completely agree with you. And one of the things about the Roman Catholic Church and their role in the whole extraterrestrial narrative is that, you already mentioned that one of them is that they came out with a statement that they would baptize these aliens, right? So they're pushing that whole they're from another planet motif. And then at the same time, they literally just came out with a document that was basically in a summary and synopsis that they were preparing the world for disclosure of these beings and trying to figure out a way for the world governments to be able to condition the masses to accept them when they show up. Right. Which is extremely dangerous. If you don't, if somebody doesn't think that's dangerous, I don't know what's wrong with you, but that's crazy,
No, you're right. And we have also the various quote unquote apparitions of demonic entities, in my opinion. that the Catholic Church,
Fatima and all that.
yep, holds very dear, and incorporates the quote unquote prophecies of, you know, these Marian apparitions, as they call them, when instead I would say it's demonic entities, incorporates them into their belief system. You know, and I mean, that's very close to believing in extraterrestrial aliens. It's a hot skip to jump to that, you know.
Yep. And that's one of those things that the Roman Catholic is very good at, and that they've always done. Even when, like, for example, let's skip the whole extraterrestrial thing, right? When they go into another country and they meet these pagan cultures, all they do is mix the pagan culture within their own belief system, right? So they're doing the same thing with aliens. They're doing the same thing with these quote unquote extraterrestrials, these fallen angels. They're doing the same thing with them. All they're doing is taking them and incorporating them into their already set in stone doctrines.
Yeah.
So that's why you have the Queen of Heaven in their own belief, right? They mix that with paganism. The Queen of Heaven in the Bible is not a good person. It's a deity. It's basically Diana. And I mean, she goes by many names, but it's one of those things, like, when they go into South America, right? They meet all these pagan these pagan cultures, and whatever they believe, they just take it and incorporate their version of Christianity and sprinkle a little Jesus in there, and now it's just like this entire new thing. And that's what they're doing with the whole extraterrestrial narrative. They're trying to prepare the world to accept them and then incorporate them into their already preconceived doctrines and beliefs.
Yeah, absolutely. I even when I was younger, even went out here to where I stay, not too far away, they had apparitions of Mary, and all kinds of wild things.
That's funny.
You know,
That's so fake.
they had like a apparition of Mary, like in some kind of a window glass or something like that. You know, I think it was fake, but
Of course
all
it
these
was.
people, I mean, just out there bringing, you know, it's like, you know,
The
cooking,
sacrifices.
yeah, cooking cakes to the Queen of Heaven. It was just crazy. Reflect back on it now. It's like,
It was so fake.
I mean,
How long ago was that?
all the stuff that, you know, that happens out here is,
It's like one of those 3D things that you turn and it looks, you know, like those 3D images. You turn them and you see it, whatever. How do you explain it? You know what I'm talking about? Those. It's like made of rubber. You can scratch it, it makes a noise. It was like an image like that. It was so fake.
Wow.
yeah.
It's like seeing Jesus on a piece of toast, bro. Like, you know what I mean?
It was like that ridiculous. And even as a kid, I knew it was fake, but my mind told me to believe it because everybody else did. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
So Lionel, could you go into this story a little bit more? Just because I've never heard of it. I mean, I've heard of Fatima and I've studied all that stuff and those apparitions and messages from the little kids, but what happened in your part of the world?
hold on, say that last part again because you're kind of breaking up. Sorry. What happened in my part? Okay.
Yeah, what happened in your part of the world?
Oh, so I mean, I could so many stories. Let me see. I could start off with the UFO sightings that I saw. I'd say the first one that I saw was I was a child. I'd say I was like a little like in between teenage and, you know, older than 10. So I might be about 12 or 13 or something like that. Maybe 12. But anyways, we were all driving home and it was me, my dad, and my grandmother. It was all three of us who were leaving Walmart and we will always go late. So it had to been at least like 9:30, 10 o'clock driving home. And I don't know who spotted it first, but I think my grandma spotted it first. And it was like the color of a stoplight, not the stoplight, the go color. It looked just like that same exact color that you see at the lights, that same green. And first it just looked like a bean, the shape of a bean, I would say. and it was just floating there, and then it just started zigzagging in the sky, like as if someone was getting a lightsaber in the middle of the night and just shaking it around. Like that's how it looked like it was moving. It was just just making all these crazy patterns, and it was unbelievable. And at the end of it, it just kind of just disappeared, I guess, right? Did it just disappear or shot away? I think it disappeared. I've seen so many UFOs, man. It's either they disappear or they shoot away. But I'm pretty sure that one, I think that one disappeared. Like the light just kind of got dim and it kind of goes away. But that was the first one that I saw, my first UFO. And
now, did that experience at the time, like the age that you were at, being 11 or 12, 10 to 12 years old, like what did you think about that? Did you grow up as a Christian or no?
Yeah, I did. I grew up as a Christian, but I still had no concept of what anything was. I was very young, and I kind of like the way I was taught in this Christian school. No offense to them, it was just a school a long time ago. They have a beautiful church today, and their pastors are very knowledgeable. But just the way the school was, the way it was worked for the arithmetics, like all the stories stuck in my head were like if it was a math subject, like the subject would be like what's 10 turtles plus 15 giraffes and Noah's boat equal, and it had these little pictures, and the pictures just looked ridiculous. So I always had like this wrong image of what the Bible was, like the Noah's Ark with the giraffe head sticking out of it and everyone stuffed in. So I really didn't believe, like when they said there was a giant named Goliath, I didn't take that as serious. I thought it was just a tall guy, but little do we know, some monstrosity. But so at the time, I didn't really have a good concept of what Christianity was, and I just thought it was aliens because that's all I could possibly link it to because of everything I see on TV at the time as a kid. Independence Day had already came out by this time, so I was already knee deep into all that stuff, and I liked it too. I used to be really into all that stuff, UFOs,
Same.
ancient aliens. I used to love ancient aliens when they used to come out like in the early 2000s, man. I went down that road for a while before I became a Christian. After I had some some demonic attacks, man, that scared the life out of me.
Yeah, you know what's whack, dude, is that just to say it, dude, is like even the entire Ancient Aliens thing, that whole series is all based off of like Zachariah Sitchin's misinterpretation of the tablets that he had wrote a book about. Like most scholars today would laugh at Zachariah Sitchin for what he believes about the Anunnaki and all that stuff, in the ancient alien theory. And it's kind of wild how prevalent it became when that show came out, because I wasn't a Christian when I saw my first couple UFOs, but it already stuck in my mind that these were like extraterrestrials and possibly gods, like they possibly planted us here. Like that was my train of thought when I first saw it, because I didn't grow up as a Christian.
No, I was agreeing with you. I had the same idea because that's what Ancient Aliens said. And then they started saying that what if Jesus was a hybrid seeded by the Anunnaki and all this nonsense. And because you at this point you believe in space, right? And I don't believe in space today. I think it's a bunch of nonsense. But when you do believe in space, all this stuff is 100% a possibility.
Right.
Because I don't know who created who created us, who created them, and the cycle goes on to the end of your Chigo madness, and you start thinking that we're going to be living on Mars next year, and So when I believed in that, it was all possible. But once I started looking up at the sky, and it looks just like a bunch of little lights, and when you get a telescope, you pull in the stars, they just look like these weird orbs with lightning through it going. You know what I mean? They look nothing like pictures that you see, but some of them look crazy, like a ball with like all this lightning or bolts coming around it. Some of them are spinning really fast like a top. They look pretty wild. They actually look more interesting what they really look like than what these CGI photos are. They look actually way more crazy in real life when you look at them than they do on these dumb pictures.
Man, I agree with you. And first of all, I want to say that if I talk at all during your talking on Zoom, it doesn't cut the other person off. So if this does cut you off at all when I kind of butt in, I apologize for that. But I just want to say I agree with you, bro. And the fact that if you study these like orbs and the description that you're talking about, and you see these other videos of like people with P90 the P900 or whatever cameras they have, and they're zooming in on the stars, and they look like dancing bodies, like this light that's almost underwater, right? And they're dancing, and they got all these things in the middle of them, and they got all these colors and like lightning bolts that are kind of flashing through the middle. That's exactly what some of these orbs look like.
Yeah, they look pretty crazy, especially Saturn, because Saturn does have like a little ring around it, but it's nothing like the ones they show you on the surfing the rings of Saturn, all this nonsense. But it does have like a weird, like it's the weirdest shaped one out of all of them. It's very interesting. So that's all very interesting to me. Who knows what Saturn is, because it's it's the most different looking one out of all of them.
That's probably why it's so worshipped by the ancients, especially the Greeks. But yeah, man. So what's that?
It looks like a little galaxy. You know how the galaxies look, like the little shapes? Because those things are real too. Are they? I don't think they're like what do they say? There's like a trillion, gazillion suns and planets there. I don't think it's that, but there's definitely, when you look through a telescope, you can see those little swirls, those little galaxies, and it's crazy. Whatever, like, what are those too? That's also pretty wild.
Yeah, we know the Bible calls them celestial bodies, right? Like, it's kind of and it's also like obviously there's like three. It says celestial bodies, terrestrial bodies, but the point I'm getting at is that the comparison there is that they're alive, in my opinion. Like, there's some sort of intelligence to them, and oftentimes in the Bible, angels are referred to as stars too. And I don't claim to know or understand the whole thing, but I do know enough to know that what they're trying to teach us ain't right. Like, it's definitely not even close to what they're trying to teach us. But what I want to do right now is I just want to start off. It doesn't matter who goes first, but I want to start off with your testimony, how you came to Christ. I know you said you grew up as a Christian, right? But oftentimes people who grow up in the church believe they're saved, because they grew up in the church. Is there a point in your life that you realize that maybe you weren't saved, and then you finally came to the knowledge of the truth? You know what I mean?
Yes. This is my testimony. So it's the one story that I have. I said it before, you probably heard it, but it was the one. I had a lot of experiences from all this weird stuff going on, but the one that woke me up to reality was when I was, I think, 14 or 15. I had gone out to a party, a high school party, and I got invited by like the older people, and I never, so I was excited to go. I wasn't, it was my first party going to, like, house party, and then I had never drank before, and it was the first time I drank as well, and I got really extremely sick. Everybody, all the older people kept feeding me drinks and, trying to be cool and keep up with them, and just made me completely sick. So anyways, I get a ride home. I had it so long ago, I forgot who I went with. But I remember getting a ride home, and at the time, nobody was at the house. Everybody was at the hospital where my grandfather was at. And I had the key to the mobile home, the ranch that we're living on. And it was the first time me ever being there by myself too, because usually there's always someone at the house. Our house had, 2, 3, 4. There's about 5 of us that lived there in a 2-bedroom. So there's always someone home, but there was times where, like, my grandfather and my grandma would help out, their other siblings, and they'll let them sleep, and so it was like 5 of us there, but most of the time there's at least like 8 people there, if that makes any sense. All just staying, getting stuff like that. Not like in a bad way, but just, so there's always someone there. So this was my first time ever being by myself, so that's why it was scary, because it was pitch black where we live. There's no one in the mobile home. And the mobile home is creepy at night because you can hear every single noise that happens outside and inside and on the roof and everything. Because if there's a lot of noise, something's wrong, because either there's some weirdo on your property because the neighbors are so far away, there should be no reason why, right? So it's either some weird demonic activity that's happening, or there's even worse, a human that's weird and psychotic on your property. So anyways, it was my first night there, so I was thinking about all the weird noises I was hearing, and I felt sick. I remember throwing up because I was so had drinking so much alcohol, so I threw up. I remember that. And then I remember waking up the next morning, and I was sleeping on this little cot type of I keep always forget the name. I always tell the story and I always forget the futon. There you go. Those futon couches that fold into a bed and turn into a couch. And it was like a really cheap one. And I remember it was like just like the frame of it was like for a kid. You know, I was a kid. I was like 14, 15. It wasn't very big. I was a small, skinny guy. So it was like a teenage one. So you could just pick it up and like toss it. It weighed like 40 pounds. So it was one of those ones, and I was sleeping on it in the couch position, and my face was against against the backside of it, so I couldn't see what was behind me. And I just remember something picking it up and slamming it, like trying to wake me up. And I didn't want to open my eyes because as soon as I opened my eyes for a second, I just felt the hangover that was upon me, right? And for the first time, and it was in the daytime too, so that was very important. That's a very important thing about it because it happened in broad daylight. So I got picked up again, higher, bam, drop it, like not like a slam, but like someone just picked it up and dropped the edge of it, so that they're picking up one side of it and keep picking it up and dropping it. And then on the third time that it happened, I had just put two and two together that it was Christmas, I believe. I think it was Christmas Eve or Christmas morning. And so I was assuming it was family over trying to wake me up to open presents. So I started screaming and shouting my cousin's name, and no one responded. And then it got picked up again, and then it like flipped me off of it, and I fell on my back. And then there was like all this vibrating, like the front door was right in front of me, or in my vision, I guess. It was like in my vision, I was laying on my back, and it was like to the right of my eye, to the right of my head, and I'm seeing the door shake, and something stomping. I could feel all the pressure of the floor, shaking as someone's really heavy coming towards me, and then you can hear the growling. I started hearing the growling, and I felt something on top of me, and it was very strong, and I could smell the breath of it, smell like rotten eggs, and it kept growling at me. I looked down at my wrist, and something was holding me with big hands. I could see like some kind of like a blurry indention. So anyways, all that's going on. I'm freaking out. It feels like it was like a year that it lasted, but it was probably about 30, 40 seconds. And it was the longest 30, 40 seconds of my life. So I thought I was going to die because I couldn't breathe. I had the most horrible thoughts in my head because whatever that the growl of the noise and how it smelled, I was starting to get like an image in my head of this big, like to me, I just had this vision of like this big reptile beast thing, like a dragon or something on top of me. That's what it felt like. That's what it sounded like. That's all I could. I didn't see anything though. I just saw like a blurry shape. It had like a shape to it. It was blurry. But anyways, in my head, this is where I woke up, and then I was calling all these, in my head. I'm like, man, what's going on? Please go away. Please leave me alone. All those different thoughts. And then when I called upon Jesus, the thing just went away. It made like an ugly growl, ugly noise, and it just left the front door. The front door was moving. And that was the day where I put two and two together that there's Jesus and his name is very powerful, and it scared the living daylights out of that thing, whatever it was. So that's my testimony. That one, that was the moment that I got proven something, so to say.
Yeah, I mean, that's sketchy, but it's also beautiful at the same time. And I mean, sometimes it takes that type of experience for people to realize there's more to life than just a 9 to 5 and sitting at your desk doing paperwork. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes people need that type of experience. And I got plenty of my own, but right now I want to hop into to Dominic's. How about you, bro? Like, did you grow up as a Christian? And if so, did you have, a moment in time where you finally realized that Jesus Christ is the truth, and it wasn't just all, it wasn't just all nonsense or whatever, like when most people grow up as Christians and in the church and they're indoctrinated, they feel like I only believe this because this is what I grew up with, or did you believe from a very young age and just kept it going?
Well, I think from a young age, probably 4 or 5 years old, I saw my first UFO. I didn't know what it was, but it was a flying cube. And that was my first experience. I didn't know what a UFO was. And this was near San Diego. We used to live out there when I was a kid. And we moved down to the desert. My mom was involved with a lot of prayer meetings. And I went with her and just used to pray with them and all that stuff that goes along with it. And so, I mean, I knew there was there was Christ from a very young age. And I know it was power when out in the backyard one day, a cat was mauling a bird. And my mom was out there, and I chased the cat away and took the bird, and it was, excuse me, it was dead. Had a big old hole in its chest. Mom says, well, why don't we pray for it? And, when you have a mind of a child, there's no doubt in it. The world hasn't corrupted you yet, right? So, started praying for it, and I pictured Jesus in my head. Was asking him to heal this little bird. And I don't know if it was a minute or how long the time was. My mom says, look, open your eyes. And the hole in the chest was closing up. Flesh was growing back, feathers were growing back. The bird stood on my hand and flew away. So later growing up, moving on to the ranch, life gets in the way. You get influences by others, and you get caught up in ancient aliens and UFOs and some other things, high school, all that stuff, girls and parties and all that entails. And I think that a lot of people fall back at times. They lose their way, and but not fully. I didn't lose my way. But on this ranch, what woke me up was listening to too much heavy metal back in the 80s. Iron Maiden and some other bands, Judas Priest, and music changes your DNA, changes who you are. When I saw my face a lime green one day, listening to I think it was Iron Maiden, 666, Number of the Beast. I knew right there and then that.
Yep.
What's that?
Oh, I was just agreeing with you. That's something I noticed when I was a kid too. Is because I grew up with a lot of '80s music when I was young, and I noticed that they were extremely satanic, and everybody tried to explain it away as, oh, this is all for attention and blah blah blah. It's like Ozzy and all them. It's like you guys are blind.
Ozzy's another one I can't stand to this day. And but back when I'm in the '80s, I liked Ozzy, but now every once in a while I hear his music come on, I just shut the radio off or just change it. I just can't listen to that whiny voice anymore. And so I got rid of everything with heavy metal like that, Iron Maiden. And but I started seeing black apparitions, sleep paralysis. One night I went out, hang out with my older brother and his friend. Spent the night at his place. He had a mobile home somewhere in, I don't know, Potato City or Palm Springs, I don't know, one of those places. And we were all faded that night. And I woke up in the middle of, I don't know what it was, the morning hours. And there's a headless man standing in the hallway. And I was like, wow, it's weird because when you see something like that, you see it, but you don't run. You just fall back asleep. It's like some kind of hypnosis. And the next day, I asked the guy who owned the place, I said, hey, man, you know what I saw last night? He goes, yeah. He goes, yeah, people have seen that here. So there's, some people want to call these souls of dead people who haven't gone forward, but I don't believe that. I believe these are demons that are very ancient, especially on the ranch. Whatever's out there had it been some kind of ritualistic land at one time back in the past. Might have been natives, it might have been maybe a people before them, an unknown race. But out there was there was some kind of monster out there. It made a shrieking sound. It was this makes you believe in Christ, believe me. This thing, the shriek would make, I think Michael Heiser called it the best, the howler. It has to do with Lilith and the owl, and the owl symbolism of that, the iconography. And whatever this thing was, it was haunting us. It was disturbed because I guess we had a home on the land, and there'd be nights where I'll be laying in bed and there'd be, I mean, howling, shrieking, like a woman crying and a goat being killed and a chicken crowing. I mean, it was a weird sound. I can't even describe it. But what this sound would reverberate through your soul, through your body. It wasn't just a sound you hear that scares you, went right through you. And I knew, it wasn't good. We're out there with my shotgun. We lived on a hill that was cleared of all brush. So there's no animal can hide behind any bushes because there's coyotes out there. Go out at the spotlight, nothing. Mind you, this thing sounded like it was 20 feet from the window. Nothing out there. Walk down towards the bottom, towards the edge of the hill, search the spotlight, nothing. Nothing can hide out there. As soon as I closed that door, it was right there again, like 20 feet from the back window again. Dogs, pit bulls, German shepherds, Dobermans all running inside or cowering at the front door, the opposite side. This thing, it was something evil, obviously, and I did get a glimpse of it one night. In some tapestries, it was a big black figure. It was very big. It was across the street, and these things are real, and it had to be something generational there on that land. It had to do with the people of the past that lived there. There's a lot of scorched earth there where they bake their food and clay pottery and arrowheads and bones and all kinds of weird stuff out there. And
Now, is this the place that because I think I've heard you guys talk about it quite a bit. This is the ranch that, like, you're digging a foot into the ground and all of it is burnt, right? And you guys find like bones wherever you dig, there's bones, and wherever you dig, there's evidence that there was like a major fire going on, right? Is this the same ranch?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
Wherever we dig pretty deep, there's like red sand all over the property.
Right.
Like sand is reddish. The deeper you went, the more red it got. Find Indian pottery, stuff like that, seashells, arrowheads. Me personally, arrowheads. One arrowhead. A lot of pottery, a lot of seashells. Seashells it was easy to find seashells up there. Like, easy. There's like a whole field of them.
Now, where was this, if you guys don't mind? Like, what state, at least?
California, Bermuda Dunes.
Okay. Wow. Anyways, go on. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I know that I've heard some of you guys' stories about that. I knew that it was very burnt, like wherever you guys went to go dig, like it was burnt. So that's very interesting.
Yeah, something happened out there. Whatever that was, who knows? Probably, I don't know. Maybe sacrifices happen out there to call upon these entities. And what I did one night is my former her mother had just passed away one night. You know, during the day, but that evening we're all sitting on the couch in the living room, and but hold on. Wait, give me a second.
Yeah, you're good. Now, Lionel, is this the same place that you also grew up when you were young?
Yes, it is. Same exact place. We all grew up together, and that I think I was there till I was like 19. Yeah, no, 18. Yeah, I was there till I was about 18. A lot of weird stuff out there, man. You name it, I mean, everything that you said pretty much is the same things that I've experienced. That weird noise, I heard that noise too plenty of times, and I don't miss it. Like you said, it sounds like a dying pig or something with a rooster mixed in it and a girl crying. It was awful. And yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there. UFOs, saw a big triangle UFO too, like a big boomerang, size of a football field, massive.
Wow.
And yeah, that was a crazy one. He saw it with me.
Yeah, that was interesting. And getting back to my former, and then the day her mom passed away, I was watching TV and started hearing something walking in the patio in the front. It sounded really heavy. Boom, 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 just walking. Went by the window, boom, boom. And the door started rattling. Boom, 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 boom. And a growling sound. It was snorting. And you can tell by it's snorting that the nasal cavity was pretty large. It was some kind of giant monster out there, a demon. And we all froze for a second. And it was just something that would never leave me. I always remember that. So I got up, grabbed my gun, for whatever that I was going to do. Went outside, there was nothing. And so said a prayer about involving Christ and the salt of the earth. And I did a prayer around the home. And never came back. But whatever this thing was, it was large. It seems like they have some kind of cloaking ability. Because they're there, but maybe I walked out there and I didn't see it, but it was there. When you hear stories of these monsters that have this cloaking ability, if I know that then, I would have looked more carefully around my surroundings. But who knows? Maybe it slipped back into its other dimension. It was just really that was a frightening night. And things like this bring you closer to Christ, because once again, only in His name can you rebuke these things, and you know they'll leave. They'll leave you. You know, it's I don't know. So many things happen out there.
Yeah, man. To me personally, it sounds like, because I listen to a whole lot of Dogman and Bigfoot stories, and both of them actually have quite a bit of testimony that they have that ability to quote, like to cloak, right? Like, so a lot of people compare it to the movie Predator, in a sense. And I'm assuming, like, when it's dark outside, I mean, if they're cloaking like that, you wouldn't see them anyway. But during the daytime, you might be able to see like a shimmer type of thing. But yeah, to me, it sounds like maybe you had some Dogman or Bigfoot activity out on your ranch, and that's not surprising because the way you're describing how the land is and what you guys have found out there, it sounds like to me an ancient Native American burial ground type of thing. And we know that if you study those types of things, a lot of the times it's not Bigfoot that's usually near that realm of space. It's usually like a Dogman, right? And the way that you're describing the noise, I mean, we know that Bigfoot does like the whoops and stuff like that, and I don't know if anybody's heard the Sierra sounds and stuff, but the way that you're describing it sounds more like a Dogman to me. And I'm not saying I know that for sure, but that's just what it sounds like. And it wouldn't be surprising to me if it was.
Might have been, I never can't find any dog footprints like that.
Did you have animals die or anything like that?
Yeah. Animals died. Had one die. That that was found void of fluids. And that has to do with the Lionel's story about the reptilian entity that was seen out there. And me personally, that's one animal that my dog that was killed, and a lot of other dogs disappeared. German Shepherds, Dobermans, pit bulls, they just disappear. And
yeah, but like, so can you and you might be doing this, but if not, can you go into that story a bit? Because again, like, I've listened to you guys' podcast quite a bit, and the circumstances were insane in the condition that you found your dog in. Could you just go into that just a little bit so that the audience can know what was happening there?
Well, the dog was pit bull, found in the four-way stop, corner of the property. It was looked like it had been dead for a long time. It was just a carcass. It was just skin. Void of blood or water or anything. The eyes were sunken in already. It must have been a horrific death because the way it looked, it was just, and when I reflect back on it, the body was still there. There's no coyotes took it away. It wasn't torn apart. There was no animals, messing with it. There's no other footprints or anything. And it was really sad. She was a good dog. So whatever this thing was, this lizard entity, I would say that it killed her. And
now this is the dog that you guys found where, like, basically the head was like squished flat, right? Like completely flat, like paper, right? Is that correct or no?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, it's just looked like a carcass. It was just all bones.
Wow.
Bones with fur. Looked like an animal had been dead for weeks. And so that had to do with, in my opinion, had to do with the entity that was out there seen at the same corner. But after I heard that story from Lionel and his friend, I stepped with the loaded 12 gauge in my bed for the duration of staying there. Because whatever this thing was, if it was physical, then it could be shot. And I wanted to get back at it for my dog if I ever came upon it out there in the night. And it was, you know, I mean, living out there was, it was nice living out there actually. The landscape, the mountains. Just when the sun sets, that's when you start thinking. Sunsets. You look across the desert, the full moon, the sand is shimmering white. And you just look out there and say, you know, what is coming tonight? It's crazy, man. And so I just held my ground out there. And there was when Lionel mentioned the green UFO. The next morning, my mom asked me, "Did you guys see anything last night?" I said, "What do you mean?" She says, "Well, I heard the ladder on the rooftop, and I heard you guys walking up there." I said, "No, we were asleep." So I believe that whatever was piloting this green glowing crap, they came back and followed us and were on the rooftop. And it's just one thing after the other out there. It's just, when I reflect back on it, it's been so long now, but back then it was just surrounded by orchards, agriculture, open desert. Now it's just turning to houses and schools, and everything's been destroyed now, the nature of it. But whatever's out there is probably still out there. Because that land is vacant now. You know, it's still vacant. Nothing's been built on it. There's been beams of light seen there on the property.
I just had a dream about that place like 2 nights ago.
Yeah, there's been beams of light seen there. I would take that as portals. And I don't know, man. Lionel got some other stories about orbs and lights and other things. But if you want to know more about the reptilian being, Lionel's, he knows more details about it than I do.
Hello? Hello?
Lost connection.
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. I didn't even realize I was on mute, dude. I never used Skype, my bad. But you know, one of the things that I've been thinking of since you've been telling the story and the story of your dog, it seems very consistent, especially with the UFO stuff. Like, it seems very consistent with you know, ranchers finding their cattle completely drained of fluid. And you know, I don't know if you guys found any cuts on your dog or whatever, but you know, within UFO stories and cattle mutilations, sometimes there's cuts, but sometimes there's not, and they're just completely drained of all their fluid, all their blood, and all that stuff. So, do you think that maybe that experience that you had has something to do with the UFO that you guys had seen, or do you think it has more to do with, like, or maybe they're connected? I don't know, but maybe the creature that obviously was dwelling on your land. You know, do you think that the UFO phenomenon and the creature that you know was on your land and the situation with your dog, do you think it's all connected?
I think so. I think it's all connected.
Yeah.
There's also out there, I don't know if you've seen a jackrabbit run.
Yeah.
Or we try to shoot a jackrabbit, they're almost impossible. Things are fast.
Quick. Yep.
And out there, I find a lot of half jackrabbits. No, they didn't look chewed up, just look like a nice, evenly sliced in half. No blood dripping, nothing, just half jackrabbits.
I'd love to come out and visit that place someday, dude. I'll camp out there for a week.
There's nothing out there anymore.
It's just, you can,
I
but
don't know. Could be something out there.
yeah, maybe that the howler will come back. Who knows? I go by there frequently, and to go visit my sister. She has a house back there. They built a bunch of houses way back there, about a mile away, 2 miles away. And yeah, I don't know. It's just it's just a mystery there. There's well, there were bones found. They built a high school on that football field, and I'm sure they get some weird stuff happening there at the high school.
Wouldn't want to be the coach during football practice in that school, dude. I'll tell you that.
Oh man! And when they were preparing the new roads out there was an archaeological dig out there, a property down the street, and whenever you have one of those digs, that means they found bones.
Right.
And they just removed them, I guess, and go about their business. But that whole area there, I mean, I believe it was probably a lot of little villages out there in the past when the water line was up here. It was higher. It was part of the Sea of Cortez at one time, back in the days of the Spaniards. So this had to be over 500 years ago, probably the earliest when the water line was still here. Maybe even further beyond, maybe 1,000 years ago. And these are people's. These are Aztecas. These are the Aztecs that migrated north because the Agua Caliente Indians here adopted that language. I forget the correct term of it, but it's an Aztec type of language. And so I think that, and when you with the Aztecs, they believed in all these gods and all this worship and so they brought all their ritualistic beliefs up here.
Yep.
And these gods followed them. That's what I think happened on that ranch.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense to me that that principality that was once over them where they lived and they built these civilizations and stuff, and when they migrated up here, that they brought them with them because they were so important to them, like again, Quetzalcoatl is the serpent god for them, right? And it desired human sacrifice. And that's one of the gods that you see. Like, I live in New Mexico now, right? And a lot of people know about the Native Americans here, and I cannot for the life of me remember the tribe that was here that all of a sudden just vanished according to the evidence. But it's one of those things where even down here in New Mexico, you go to these pueblos, right, and there's 60-foot cliffs and you're 50 feet up, and they have these dwellings, and then inside of the dwellings, on the wall, they're putting these hieroglyphs in that tell a story. And they found like Quetzalcoatl pretty much coming through a portal.
Yeah.
Right. And I would assume that they're not the only ones that were influenced by this principality. And if they moved up to California, that's where it's going to go too. I mean, America is basically based off of that type of stuff. America, the whole etymology of the word is like the plumb serpent. That's what the word means. Yeah. The plumb serpent is like the principality, basically, of America. And it makes sense when you look at everything that's going on and you look in history and see the past and all that stuff too. One thing I didn't know, though, is that wherever you guys were dwelling, there was once a sea there. That's pretty interesting.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I was a sea here at one time. That's why there's
crazy,
the desert. You can still find some places now where there hasn't been any construction been disturbed. Still find seashells. There's water lines on some of the mountains that remain. A lot of fossilized coral. And just a lot of history here.
Right.
It's very, very ancient, and that's where we get our groundwater from, an ancient sea. It's really only natural.
So it's just is it just filtered through all the rocks and stuff like that underneath the ground, like all the I don't know what kind of rocks they are, but I know that like water is filtered through all the sediment and all that stuff before you can drink it. But even seawater, it takes out all the
salt.
All the salt. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
That's crazy.
And, there's up in these mountains. There's also a lot of petroglyphs of spirals and just other, I don't know what it means, a bunch of weird writings on the etched in the fossilized coral. So I asked Jonathan Dover, the Navajo Ranger, about that, and he said that the spiral represents in the native beliefs a portal. So these ancient people were seeing portals.
Wow.
And when I was scouring this part of this mountain, I found in the coral, the fossilized coral, it looks like a handprint of a giant with 6 fingers.
Figures.
And, it's on my page on Instagram. And so whatever, so the possibility that there were giants here too. Giants in these mountains up here. Because there's also fish traps too. Fish trap is a circular enclosure of rock, of boulders that when the water line comes up, the fish swim in it, and the water line recedes, the tide goes low. The fish get trapped in there, and that's how they caught their fish. And that's one way how they caught the fish. And when I was researching a show for the conquistadors, I read that the giants employed that technology of catching fish too. So there's a possibility these fish traps were probably made by the giants, and the natives repurposed them, and then academia, the archaeological academia, says, oh, well, the natives made those enclosures, but these giants also made them too. So out here, I mean, there's a lot of rocky desert mountains, but where I found this handprint, if you have the stamina to hike, which probably they did, there's pine trees up there. There's cool weather up there. So I conjecture that there's probably bones of dead giants up in those mountains, maybe even caves. But me personally, I can't do that anymore. I can't, I just the hiking and that stuff. I can't do that anymore. That's rough terrain. You'll dislocate your knees and ankles if you're not careful. It's that rough, and it's basically untouched wilderness up there. And that's the same place where my uncle told me a story of he was hiking up there when he was younger, and he's long gone now. And he told me a story of a rope that was huge, a really large diameter rope that was very old, leading up to a cave. So being young and all that, he just like, well, hey, I'm gonna climb this. So he climbed up this rope, and sure enough, led to a cave. And he walked in there, he's looking around, and he says the cave just dropped down. And that goes back to a story in Malta, where this tour led this lady into these ancient catacombs of Malta. And it's vast, very, very huge in there. And they got
It's an underground city.
Yeah, so they got this part where there's a window cut out in a rock, inside the cave. And the guy says, "Well, we don't go in there. Don't go in there." So the girl's like, "Oh, well, I ain't gonna go in there." So they went in with their candles and searching around and walking, and they had ropes tied up. They're like 3 or 4 women. They had ropes tied on, so in case anyone falls, they won't fall too far. And she came to a ledge where it just dropped straight down. And she said with her candle, she saw large giants walking. She said it had to be about 20, 25 feet tall. They all stopped and looked up at her. And that reminds me of my uncle mentioned that this cave just dropped. I mean, if it was a 20-foot drop, it wouldn't be that big of a deal for a giant.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think these things, these entities, I think they live in the mountains. I think they live, there's water running under the, in these caves, and there's viable food, there's bear, there's deer, There's berries, wild berries up there. You know, there's things they can eat. Yeah, that's one of the stories that, you know, I wanted to investigate, but as time went on, I just, you know, he told me where it was. I just don't remember where. And I always wanted to, he's gone. And I can't ask him. It was something I wanted to do when I was younger, and I just you totally just get lost in life. You know, it's not important until now. You have more knowledge about the giants and these other mysteries, and you're like, wow, you know what? If I'd known what I'd known when I was younger, I probably would have, you know, asked him again, hey, show me. Actually, just show me where it is. But, you know, that's all gone now.
Yeah, man. I mean, to be honest with you, the way that you sound young enough to do it. So I encourage you to do it. Just kidding. But like, dude, I don't know. When you start learning about the Genesis 6 paradigm and the Deuteronomy 32 paradigm and all that stuff, your whole perspective of reality pretty much changes. Now, I want to lead into, before I get into my own story and testimony, have you guys ever heard of the American Stonehenge?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's in Salem, New Hampshire, and I was born and raised in New Hampshire. Okay, so Salem was pretty much like, I don't know, 30 minutes from me probably. And I didn't know this growing up, so I never went there to check it out. But if you follow the research, especially people like L.A. Marzulli and stuff like that, like he talks about how there's a tablet there, and we know that tablet is written in Phoenician, and it talks about how the tablet is dedicated to their god Baal. So we know the Phoenicians were here. Now, if you dip into the Phoenicians, you know that they were mixed. So there was giants in the Phoenician culture, and there were also regular people, but like there was a lot of giants mixed in with those tribes. And in my belief, I believe that they came here way before Christopher Columbus and all that stuff. And like if you get into some of the Native American stories, they'll tell you straight up that like some of the structures that we see today that are contributed to the Native Americans, that they were there. The Native Americans will tell you that they were there before they even showed up. You know what I mean? So I totally believe that there were giants in North America before the prevalence, at least, of the architecture and a lot of things that the Native Americans talk about. Like and even in their own stories, they talk about giants quite a bit. You know, that goes all the way from the East Coast to the West Coast. You know what I mean? And so I know you guys are in or I don't know if you're still there, but California. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so like California, all the way to where I'm from in New Hampshire, there were giants for sure. Like for sure. There's a plethora, thousands of stories from the 1800s, 1700s, you know, of giants, and written in their newspapers. Some of them may have been fake, but not all of them obviously were fake. Now, according to your story, you know, it makes sense to me that the giants would be up in a high dwelling place with a cave for shelter, but plenty of food. And we know that on the East Coast, you know, you got the cave, Mammoth Cave in Kentucky. And most people don't know this, but it goes all the way down to where I am in New Mexico, all the way up to Maine. That's how far they think that the tunnel system actually goes, the cave system actually goes. So who knows? Who knows what's actually still down there, and who knows, you know, what's really, really going on. I mean, I just had a guy on tell his testimony about how he went into a cave dwelling that was attached to Mammoth Cave, and he saw an entity down there. You know, so I published that one, and there's millions of other stories of people talking about giants, or you know, everybody knows about Lovelock Cave. Maybe everybody in our circles, they know about Lovelock Cave and the giant of Lovelock Cave and all that stuff too. So it's almost like illogical to deny that there are giants that are here and were here. And we know from the biblical narrative, especially First Enoch, that when the giants die, their spirits are what we call demons, right? So it doesn't really matter where you're at, whether you're in the United States or Afghanistan. You know, giants were all over the world at one point, and their spirits end up almost as a type of principality in certain areas. Have you guys ever heard about that guy? I forgot his name off the top of my head, but he basically took in Anton LaVey's daughter, and they adopted her and they raised her. Have you guys ever heard that story?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so he was one time, he was driving somewhere, he was going through like a Native American land, their own territory, and a principality showed up to him and basically said, I have the right to kill you and blah, blah, blah. And I'll save that for another time. But my whole point of saying that is like there are spirits definitely in so many locations in the United States. I pretty much wherever anybody dwells, right? Like there are principalities and spirits there that have the ability to either manifest or like there are cryptids at the same time. Now, I mean, you can connect them all if you want to, but to me, things like Dogman, Bigfoot, and other cryptids are like subproducts of what the giants or the fallen angels did. You know what I mean? Like we talk about the Book of Jasher or Jubilees, and they talk about how they were manipulating everything from humans to animals. And I think that happened all over the world. So it doesn't surprise me that where you guys are, and even where I live, there's a whole lot of paranormal things going on. If you go down to it's a certain place in New Mexico that has like they talk about an underground base, and where this location is, they talk about how there's a ton of Bigfoot sightings, ton of UFO sightings. It's like everything that we talk about and look into in these certain areas, these congested areas, like everything that we talk about happens in those areas, if that makes sense. Like you got Bigfoot, Dogman, UFOs in certain areas. And usually when people talk about like their cryptid experiences, they talk about how seeing lights and UFOs at the same time. So to me, like it seems all connected. And California, where you guys live, is like it's such a big state. It's so much history over there too. Like who knows what happened in the ancient past, and who knows? I'm sure there's like a ton of uncharted territory out there. There's no way that. I mean, you can think about Alaska, for example, which is 2.5 times the size of Texas, and they have Bigfoot sightings up there. They have cryptid sightings up there. They have UFO sightings up there, and 99% of Alaska in general is unmapped. So my whole point of saying that is that even all around the United States, there are so many different things that we cannot explain, but a logical mind would conclude that there's obviously something going on. Obviously. Where I'm from in New Hampshire, a lot of people know about the Betty and the Hills testimony, right? About how they were abducted when they were traveling down 95 and encountered a UFO, and it was like basically the first major story that broke of a UFO abduction. Now, when I was growing up, I saw a ton of UFOs. And for example, one night I was standing outside in Northwood, New Hampshire with my brother, where we had lived at that time, which is like a town over from where we used to live. We're looking up at the sky. We used to be sky gazers and just watch the sky all the time before we were Christians. And we saw this one bright light traveling across the sky. And I pointed out to my brother, who happens to be my twin, right? So we're looking up at this ball of light. And I'm like, dude, what is that? And then all of a sudden it breaks off into 7 different lights and ends up in like a V formation. Like in the military where the planes fly in a V formation, or like birds, for example, when they fly in a V formation, right? That's exactly what it was. All these 7 different lights ended up coming out of this one light in the sky and ending up in this perfect position, traveling across the sky in the V. There were 7 different lights, and we were just freaking mind blown. The only thing that I can say about giants in New Hampshire is the fact that the Phoenician tablet is there, and the Stonehenge of America, that's there. We know there's sacrifice table and everything that they were doing in the Middle East at the time, or way before that time. You know what I mean? When they were sacrificing children, and we think about like Og's bed, right, and Goliath's bed, and how massive it was. Well, that same thing that was happening over there was happening over here in New Hampshire too. We have stories in like Michigan of the giants being there because of the copper. We have plenty of Phoenician evidence that they were there way before Christopher Columbus. We have ships that have been found that were not Viking ships, they were Phoenician ships. We have like a ton of different things that make our history of America like so much different than what you're taught in school. Before I get into my testimony though, sorry for the rant, but before I get into my own testimony, I want to ask you guys if you guys have anything else to share according to like paranormal experiences. And I don't mind who goes first, but I know you guys have a lot to share, so feel free to.
Well, I think probably another impacting story was the ranch that my aunt stayed on, my uncle. A lot of paranormal activity out there. I was just a kid. They were seeing the lady in white. They call it the La Leona. And
that's big down here too, bro.
Yeah, it was just, the stories I used to hear as a kid, man, I was like, it's getting like, it's crazy. And giant owl and the witch, they called it. So the story is my uncle shot it when I was on trees. It was screeching, screaming, making all these weird noises, and he shot it with the shotgun. And it says when he looked at it, the eyes were changing different colors, and it was screaming like a woman. In the hole in the chest, it was human hair. And he burned it, and it was just screaming like a woman. Someone being on fire. And I remember one day, they're hearing more noises on the roof and around the house, and chains, and moaning and groaning, and all kinds of weird noises outside. So I remember going as a kid and looking in the soft clay powder, and excuse me, there was these footprints. They were some were the size of a baby, some were adult size, some were missing toes, some were clubbed, some were flat-footed, some would morph into big giant claws, walk around the house, circle. I remember clearly seeing the hoof prints. It wasn't 4 legs, it was 2 legs. You can tell. So what this thing was, it was walking around the house, and it was the only one that led back to a barn. With some kind of, like Gary Wayne calls them, devil goat gods. And, there's some things that in life that you forget about, and there's some things you don't. These are one of the things that I didn't forget. I didn't forget that. Didn't forget the howler. Didn't forget the giant rattling on the door trying to get in. Just certain things you don't forget. And those bring you back to Christ, because he's the only one that can protect you. The more you get into Christ, the more these things attack. And that's my testimony. And people out there who are lukewarm, when we die, there ain't no second chances, man. You had your chance here. You're listening to this podcast right now, telling you Jesus Christ is your Redeemer. He's the way and the life. And if you don't heed to those words and study him, and something happens to you, remember, you had that chance when you heard my voice. You have to believe that when Jesus was crucified, he was put in a tomb, the Father God raised him back from the dead, and he ascended back into heaven, set on the right-hand side of God. If you believe that he was resurrected, and you'll be saved, it's in Romans. You have to really believe it. You can't just say it. And that's my testimony. Leaving out all this other stuff, UFOs and blonde extraterrestrials and angels and saucers and all that nonsense. None, Bigfoot, Dogman, none of that stuff matters. It's interesting, but none of it really matters. What matters is focusing on Christ, because when this game is over, He's the only one that's going to save you from all this.
Amen.
None of conjecture.
Yeah, amen. I agree with you, bro. I think that it's when you like discover this type of thing, like Dogman, Bigfoot, cryptids, aliens, UFOs, all that stuff. Like it makes it changes your paradigm in a way. But if like when you're looking at it from a biblical perspective, it just makes the Bible come alive a lot more. So I think that because it's all connected, it's important. But at the end of the day, what really matters is your relationship with Jesus. And
Right.
what I find interesting is that Christ makes this, Paul makes this statement about Christ and how everything is he has dominion over everything, seen and unseen.
Right.
And that's why, to me, it's so interesting when you hear stories about Bigfoot, Dogman, UFOs, when they're able to be rebuked in the name of Jesus Christ. It shows that this is more of a spiritual matter than a physical matter, in my opinion. And that there's something more to it. Like, it's not like Bigfoot's just a gorilla, dude. You know what I mean? Like, he's not just an ape that lived a long time and survived throughout all these years, survived the flood, survived the ice age, all that stuff. I think that it's a lot deeper than that. And although it's fascinating, I agree with you that at the end of the day, it's really not the most important thing. Jesus Christ, life, death, resurrection, and your relationship with Him and your faith in Him is what truly, truly matters. But again, like, it all connects, you know what I mean? It all connects in some way to the biblical narrative.
Right. And we read the Bible in Ephesians that there's power and principalities. So they're in the heavens, they're on the earth, and in the earth. So these entities are everywhere. And I get the fascination with these cryptids, I do. But it comes to the point, in my opinion, where some people start idolizing them.
Yeah.
They start, getting people into wearing their T-shirts and Bigfoot T-shirts with sunglasses on and all this other idolatry, straight idolatry. When you start going for these things, you're asking for trouble. Oh, they saved a child. Well, yeah, you know in Alaska they slaughtered a bunch of men? I mean, there's a my hypocrisy only goes so far when it comes to cryptids, and I think it's fascinating because it's an unknown. People want to know as human nature, we're curious. We want to know. We want to know what a dogman is, what a Bigfoot is, what the zoo is, supposedly some secret base where these things are being held or are being recreated. And I forgot where I got that from. I think it was the late Scott Carpenter. And
Yep.
I think it was Scott Carpenter. And so these things, they are real. I personally wouldn't go look for them. I wouldn't venerate them. I wouldn't wear a shirt that has their face on it, even if it's colorful and it's supposed to be fun. Because what would Christ say if you walk around with a shirt with Bigfoot on it? You're idolizing it, man.
Right.
I mean,
You're wearing a Bigfoot shirt, but you wouldn't wear a shirt that has Jesus on it.
yeah.
Not that either of those things are okay, to be honest, in my own opinion. I think that we should make images of God in any way, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I like the name of your podcast. If it's a narrative. And I just don't, a lot of these podcasts that promote themselves to be Christians, they're a lot of idolatry now. And I'm not, people say, well, you shouldn't pass judgment on your brothers. Well, the Bible says you pass judgment righteously. I'm not dogging them out. I'm just calling out what they're doing. And I'm doing it righteously. You're getting people confused here. You're getting confused. These entities are friendly. That you should go look for them. Go have a picnic with them, or call down on a saucer and have breakfast with your brothers, the elder race. I mean,
Stephen Greer.
this listen to this stuff and like, I don't get how people just follow this stuff and eat it up. It's just, man, it's just so wild.
Yeah, man, things have been twisted quite a bit.
Yeah.
Quite a bit. And I agree with you, dude. Like the Bible says, those who don't really read their Bible and know the context of certain verses, they'll say, thou shalt not, judge not lest you be judged. Well, let me remind you that Christ himself gave us the prescription on how to actually judge somebody righteously. You don't just judge them by the outside. You don't judge them by their appearance. You judge them by their heart, by their fruit. He's giving us the way to actually judge somebody. And if you're a Christian promoting that you should go out there and look for Bigfoot, Dogman, and glorify these things as if they're good, like that's not right in any sense.
By their fruits, right? They're showing them.
Right. It's not right by any sense. And that's one of the things, like personally, like I've had a lot of paranormal experiences, and a part of me would be like, oh, it'd be cool to go out camp and look for Bigfoot sometime. And then I get this other thought in my head that's like, well, why? Like, what is the point of that? What is the fruit of that? Like, what? So you can prove that this demonic thing exists? Like, to be honest with you, unless it's a natural animal or a natural human being, anything outside of that to me seems demonic. It seems like it's not sanctioned by God to have been created. Like the giants, for example. That was not a thing sanctioned by God to do. And we know by extra canonical books that like there are a lot of beings out there created through the mixture of genetics that were not sanctioned by God whatsoever. So they do not have the spirit of God. In Ecclesiastes, that like he talks about how the animals have the same spirit we do. So like a natural animal or a natural human being may have the same spirit. Doesn't mean they're born again, obviously, but like they're sanctioned by God to have reproduced, created, blah, blah, blah. But like when you get into the realm of cryptids, none of those things were God's idea. None of those things were sanctioned by God to have been created. They were created outside of his will. So I don't see how any of those things could be anything else other than demonic.
Right. Well, yeah, when you hear, we had Jonathan Dover on some time ago, and he talked about on the reservation about a Bigfoot just coming out of the ground like a spirit, like a ghost, and just manifested and just walked away. And that's not, those things are also very spiritual. They're interdimensional spiritual entities. I don't think God created that thing to just turn to a smoke and just disappear and reappear. So that's.
I'm in agreement with you. Now, Lionel, I know you've been sitting there on the sidelines for quite a while, and I just want to let you hop in here and say whatever you want to say, dude. I know that we're on the topic of like cryptids and stuff, but if you want to share anything that you feel like is on your heart at this moment, like go ahead and share it. Whether it's cryptids or some other topic, just go for it, bro.
I'll just share one more story. I've been listening the whole time. I'm just kind of absorbing everything, but I'll share my first story. My first story was, I said I was about 6 years old or so. Maybe about 5 or 6. And I was sleeping in my bed, and we're living in an apartment at the time. This is when my mom and dad like moved out of the ranch to get married and like go off on their own for like a couple of years, and then they ended up getting divorced anyways. But those couple of years that they try to stray off the ranch and try to just have their own place with my mom and me, I had an experience at the apartments. This is why I don't believe it's. I mean, I do believe part of it is like this weird Indian burial stuff, but that doesn't make any sense because these apartments were a while away from where the ranch was at, and weird stuff was happening right there. So anyways, I was sleeping in my room. I was about 5, 6 years old, and I woke up in the middle of something woke me up in the middle of the night, and I was sleeping with my face facing the mirror. Those apartments with always have those two big mirror sliding closets, the cheap ones. They kind of just roll off. It was one of those though, like those two big mirrors. So anyways, I woke up and I'm looking in the mirror. I was looking at myself in the mirror, and under my bed there was like a rotting corpse. type of human being looking thing. It looked like a human that was like rotting like a zombie, like in a movie, like it's been dead for about, I don't know, a couple months, and the flesh was falling off of it. You could see some of his bones, and it was just under my bed and like coming to life, and it was like crawling very slow. But when I would look down to see, where is it at? There's nothing there. But when I looked in the mirror, it was getting closer to me. So it was like in the mirror, but it wasn't like in front of me. But I'm watching it in the mirror, like move closer to me, like it's crawling so slow out of the bed. And then as soon as it starts standing up, I just got the heart to finally just jump through it. Like in the mirror, I'm jumping on it, and then in front of me, there's nothing there. So I had to pass through it. There was the only way to run out the room was to pass through this thing. And I just remember running to my mom and dad's room, screaming, crying, and they just kind of said that, they were just tired or whatever. They kind of blew it off and just said, you're just having a bad dream. And no, man, it wasn't a dream at all. That was the most terrifying thing that's ever happened to me. But that's one of the most terrifying. Yeah, that's probably the top 5 for sure. But yeah, that's my first experience.
Jeez. And you said you were like what, 6 years old or so?
Yeah, around 6.
Oh man, I couldn't imagine. Like at that age, you can't come. I mean, at that age, you don't even have like the mind full of like indoctrination and things in there to make you come up with that on your own, anyways. Like, so what you saw, I truly believe that what you saw is what you saw.
Oh yeah, for sure. What I saw was 100%. Before I seen a zombie movie, I saw a zombie in the mirror before I saw one in a movie.
Yeah, that's insane, bro. Well, unfortunately, my co-host had to leave. He had an emergency, so I'm just gonna carry this on by myself, which we're almost 2 hours in anyways, so I'm just gonna go through with it. If you guys don't mind, I'll tell you my life story and some of the paranormal experiences that I had and how I came to Christ, and then we'll track it back to you guys real quick, and then pretty much close out. But yeah, so for me personally, I didn't grow up a Christian. Okay. From the time I was born to the age of 3, my brother and I and my sister, we lived with our mom, and she had a boyfriend at the time who was like 18 when I was 2. Okay. I was 2 years old. My mom had a boyfriend who was 18. He was an alcoholic, and he pretty much beat the crap out of my brother and my sister and I. He used to lock us in drawers. He used to throw us down staircases. He smashed a beer bottle over my brother's head at 2 years old, which made him have a brain aneurysm. So he was bleeding from the brain, had to go to the hospital, all this stuff. And the reason why I bring that up is because I think that the abuse that we experienced, the trauma that we experienced when we were young, that the spiritual experiences that we had experienced later in life had to do with that. I think that trauma and spiritual experiences kind of go hand in hand most of the time. So that happened, and when my brother went to the hospital due to his brain aneurysm, and he almost died. And my brother's my twin, like we're identical twins. He was born 5 minutes before me. And so at the hospital, the doctor saw all these, bruises and stuff on our bodies, and was questioning how this happened to my brother and all this stuff. And that caused this huge thing between my mom and my grandparents, like my mom's mom and dad. And so the state decided to take us away from my mother. And at that time, before we were even born, my mom and my actual dad had split. So they weren't together at this time. But my grandparents offered to adopt us. And so it took a long process and blah, blah, blah. We went through the system. We had to be put in like these temporary homes for a while before my grandparents could actually get custody of us. But at the age of 3, my grandparents finally got custody of us, and they raised us until, I moved out when I was like 21. So my grandparents to me are my true parents, but I don't have a whole lot of memories between the time I was born and the time I was 7. So I maybe have one memory at 7 years old. And I'm just going to say it just because I'm going to say it. Basically, it was just like me, my dad, and my brother. We were standing in this little tiny front yard, and I threw a football to my brother, and it was like a perfect spiral. My dad was mad proud of me. That's literally the only memory that I actually have of my life before the age of 8. And at that time, my dad was in and out of prison, and my mom was in and out of prison. And again, my grandparents were raising me at this time, so like it didn't like toss a wrench in anything truly until, you know, aside from like getting to actually know my parents. But yeah, so by the time I was 7 years old, I have that one memory. And shortly after that, I remember that I was at my dad's house, and we were visiting for the weekend because we had split custody. So like every other weekend I'd visit my dad, every other weekend I'd visit my mom when they were in prison. And so at this particular time, you know, I go into the bathroom, I find this porn magazine, and boom, I'm introduced to porn at the age of, you know, 8. And that really threw a wrench into my entire life, highly sexualized from a very young age. My dad ended up, he was an alcoholic and a drug addict. And when I was 8 years old, he had passed away in his sleep. And the way that it went down was basically that, you know, I was at school one day in middle school. I was in 3rd grade, and I get called out of class to go to the office. My brother gets called out of class. My sister gets called out of class. We all get called out of class to go to the office. And we get there. My grandparents are there, and we're like, you know, what's going on here? It was very confusing. And my grandparents, I saw them crying, and so I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know what was wrong. And so when we got home, my grandparents sat us down on the couch, and, you know, as best they could, pretty much told us that our dad had died. And so my dad died when I was 8 years old, and that changed my entire life in every single way imaginable. So when I was 8 and onwards, I had looked at life a lot differently. We didn't grow up as Christians. We never went to church, nothing like that. So, but this whole event had got us on the path of seeking like kind of spiritual matters, right? Like because we knew our dad died, we had to believe that there was something more than life than like a 9-to-5 paperwork type of thing, you know, that a lot of atheists and a lot of materialists believe in. Like, this is just life. So that threw a wrench in everything, and we had started seeking more. But at the same time, even though we didn't know God, we hated God because we believed that at that time, like, God had taken our dad away. You know, we were too young to understand the whole thing, and because we didn't know God, we couldn't comprehend what really was going down between that situation and God, you know. And so yeah, we just started getting into all this stuff. Like, by the age of 10, we were already into the New Age movement, the aliens, UFOs. By the age of like 12, we were already into like researching the New World Order and everything like that. And I'm 30. I'm going to be 31 in like 2 months. And so it's been a long time since we've been on this whole journey of seeking the truth. But shortly after my dad died, I got into some pretty bad stuff, like the Ouija board, because of emotionalism. You know, I wanted to talk to my dad. I wanted to hear from him. I wanted to seek him out, type of thing. I just wanted to say goodbye one more time, because what really happened was the day that we got taken out of school and brought home and told that news, I was not on good terms with my dad at all. My brother and my sister were, but I wasn't personally. My dad was he was a heavy drinker. He'd drink like a 30 pack of, you know, Budweiser a day or more, you know. And even from a young age, I understood that was wrong. And so basically, I told my dad one day that I was with him that if he didn't stop drinking, I'd never see him again. I refused to ever see him again. And And I took that very seriously. Even at a young age, I took it super seriously. And he never hurt us. He never abused us. He loved us to death, like he did. He really did. He was a good dad, despite his issues. But I thought that was wrong, and my grandparents kind of pounded in our heads that, like, what he was doing was wrong. So I told him, I'll never see you again if you continue to drink. Like, if I come back here next time in 2 weeks to see you and you're drinking, I'm going home and I'll never see you again. And that's exactly what I did. I went there 2 weeks later because it was every other week that we got to see him. And I straight up told him, because he was drinking, I straight up told him, I'm going home. So I called my grandparents. They came and picked me up, and I went home. My brother and my sister decided to stay with my dad. And I was very vigorous about it. My dad did try to go to counseling, AA, all these, these programs to help him stop drinking, but he was so far into it that he just couldn't stop. He didn't have God like we do. So that happened, and one day it was like, I want to say 2 months later, that I was like, all right, I miss my dad. I guess I'll go and see him. I guess for my turn, I'll go and hang out with him or whatever for our little session there. And I went one day to pick up my brother and sister who were at my dad's house, and my dad was like sweating profusely in his seat, in his like reclining chair. And I'm like, dude, like, are you okay? Like I just knew that there was something wrong. And I heard my Grammy say to him, like, hey, you should call like an ambulance. You do not look good at all. Like, you are sweating way too much. You don't look good. Like, something's wrong here. And he said, no, I'm fine. I'll be fine. You know how men are. They're just so super prideful about that kind of thing. And so when I went to go pick up my brother and sister that day, and my grandparents had said that, and I saw my dad for the first time in like 2 months, I gave him a hug, told him I loved him. And I was planning on going to see him our next turn. But unfortunately, that was on a Sunday night. We all go home. I wasn't thinking about nothing. We go to school the next day, and that's when we get pulled out of school. So I was on bad terms with my dad when he passed away, because that was the very next day after picking up my brother and sister. He had passed away that night in his sleep. And we get taken out of school, get told the whole thing, and our whole life shifted from there. And my brother and I, specifically, not really my sister, but even though she experienced a whole lot of stuff in the house that we were growing up with, and she didn't take the same path that my brother and I did. So we got into like the paranormal, UFOs, ghosts, all that stuff. We believed at that time that like you could contact like your dead loved ones. And so one day my cousin and my dad's brother were cleaning out my dad's apartment with all of this stuff, because he had passed away, obviously. So they were cleaning out his apartment, and they were playing with a Ouija board. They thought it was a good idea to try to contact him that day. And my uncle straight up told him, look, I don't want you guys playing with this, because I don't know why my dad even had it, but he had a Ouija board. My uncle told them, don't play with this, don't mess with this, it's dangerous, like, just don't do it. And my uncle wasn't a Christian, and he's still not a Christian this day, but he believed in like that paranormal side of things, so my cousin's playing with it, and my other cousin who was helping clean out the apartment was playing with it, and they asked the Ouija board, am I talking to Kevin, which is my dad's name? And it said yes. And then it replied to them again before they asked another question, and it said, tell Timmy not to cry. And Timmy, my uncle, my dad's brother, his name is Tim, right? So they were like confused, and they ended up calling my uncle, and my uncle's bawling his eyes out on the phone. And he's like, what are you guys doing? Why are you calling me right now? And they explained to him that the Ouija board told, masquerading as my dad, told them to tell my uncle Timmy not to cry. And they had conveyed that message. And my uncle flipped out. Fast forward like a couple years, And I'm upstairs in my grandparents' house where my room was. I was upstairs in my grandparents' house, and we had a long hallway upstairs. My room was at the very end, and we had like this little cabinet that we used to keep like board games in, right? And I was bored, so I just decided to go up in there and find a board game, see if my brother wanted to play with me, and boom, we found a Ouija board. Now that Ouija board was never there before. We never took that Ouija board home from my dad's house or anything, so we have no idea in the first place how that Ouija board even got there. Okay, so we took it out, started playing with it, tried to contact my dad. It said some things that I can't really remember, but like the whole time it was more of like I'm sure you've heard this, like people just accusing you of moving the piece and it's not really a spirit type thing. And so we couldn't figure out like whether it was somebody moving the piece or if it was a real spirit. So we just like packed it up, threw it away, like literally threw it away. And then a couple days later, I go back into that cabinet to find another board game to play, like Sorry or something, and that Ouija board was there again. And we were like, "What the heck, dude? This is weird." You know, and for context, this whole time we were already watching like Ghost Hunters and like all this stuff that's filling our minds with this idea that you're contacting your dead loved ones. Now, when I was about, I want to say, from the age of 8, like shortly after my dad died, to the age I was 19, we suffered, my brother and I specifically, suffered with sleep paralysis. And we had a ton, and I mean thousands of experiences with sleep paralysis. And for the longest time, we didn't know what it was, obviously. You know, we're too young to understand what it actually was. But for example, I'll tell you a story about how this one night, and this isn't about sleep paralysis, I'll get into a sleep paralysis story after this, but my brother and I always shared a room until about like 16 years old, and he slept on one side of the room, I slept on the other, so we were like vertical to each other, you know. And I talked to my brother and I was like, dude, we should try to contact Dad. And he was like, all right. So we're both laying in our own beds, and I'm sitting there and I'm like speaking out loud, and I said, Dad, like if you really are there, if you can really hear us, please just say one of our names. Please, we miss you, we love you. This is killing us. We just want to hear from you. And we didn't hear nothing for about 10 minutes, and we're about to fall asleep. Both of us were on the brink of falling asleep, and from the dead center of our room, all you hear is this really, really loud whisper that said, Josh, which is my brother's name. My brother's name is Josh. And it just whispered, Josh, just like that, dude, like loud, like it was played on a speaker, right? And so we both sit up in our beds, and we just start screaming, and we're like, what the, you know, like freaking out that we just heard that. And so we go and tell our grandparents what just happened. Of course, they played off as we were just dreaming or blah, 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 right? And so they didn't believe us. And that really, really changed our life, hearing that, because it wasn't like this comforting situation. It wasn't like something you'd expect if you're hearing from your dad. You know what I mean? It was sketchy. It was scary. And this like overwhelming sense of fear came over us. And, yeah, like that's something I'll never ever forget my whole life, that event that happened. But even during that time, me and my brother and I were suffering with sleep paralysis, and we didn't know what the heck it was. And so I used to, eventually we got rid of the separate beds, got a bunk bed, right? And we would take turns sleeping on the top and the bottom. And I would literally, me and my brother would stay up for days, dude. We were so afraid to try to go to sleep because we were dealing with the sleep paralysis thing for like 5 out of 7 days of the week. You know, like it was that bad. It was literally 5 out of 7 days. And I told him, I said, I was sleeping on the top bunk one night, and I'm like, dude, I'm gonna get off of here and sleep on the floor, and I just want you to like observe me, okay? If you see me like trying to yell for help, you see me gasping for air, you see me trying to, you know, I'm struggling in some form or another, like please wake me up, dude. Shake me, do whatever you got to do, because I'm dealing with this thing where I know consciously that I'm awake, but I can't move. And every time I try to yell for help and get your attention, all that comes out is like a gasp of air, even though I'm yelling inside. And so he said, okay, like he'd watch me. And eventually he fell asleep. And of course, I had sleep paralysis when he fell asleep, and vice versa. I did the same thing for him. And one night I'm sleeping on the top bunk, and bro, this is the wildest thing that's ever, one of the wildest things that's ever happened to me. I'm sleeping on the top bunk. I'm probably 14 years old, 12 or 14 years old at this time. And I started to fall asleep, and I get this feeling that comes over me. And it's that typical feeling that you feel when sleep paralysis comes over you. You're not even asleep yet, but you feel this like heaviness creep over you. This like external evil or darkness that just like lays on your chest, pins you down and puts you in this paralysis state. And I recognized that from a young age. And so I knew that I was about to have sleep paralysis. And I eventually passed out, went into a sleep paralysis episode. And next thing I know, I'm trying to fight it. Well, I'm laying there fighting this thing, this feeling that I have, this entity that's on me, which I couldn't see, but I knew there was something there. And I get lifted up off my bed, and I'm on the top bunk, okay? And I get thrown over somebody's shoulder. And I'm thinking in my head that it's my grandparents. Like maybe they're bringing me down to the bathroom or something, Like that's the only way that I could rationalize it. So I'm sitting there and I'm fighting. And I'm trying to look and I'm trying to see what's going on. And my eyes are flickering. So I can only see just like a couple seconds each time I try to fight to open my eyes. I can only see a glimpse. Right? So I knew that I was over somebody's shoulder, but I couldn't see anybody there. So all of a sudden, my door opens. I'm over somebody's shoulder. I'm trying to rationalize that it's my grandpa, bring me down to the bathroom, and so we start going down the hallway before we get to the top staircase to go downstairs through the living room, through the kitchen, and into the bathroom. Well, we're at the top of the staircase, and I'm able to open my eyes enough to like see for more than just one split second, and there's nothing there. There's literally nothing, but I know I'm over somebody's shoulder, so I couldn't see no legs. I couldn't see nothing. And so I started freaking out, and I'm like, this isn't my grandpa. Like, what is happening here, And I'm fighting it. We get to the bottom of the staircase, and I just gave up, dude. Literally just gave up. So I closed my eyes and said, whatever happens, happens. And I pass out. And next thing I know, I wake up in the morning on the floor in my own bedroom, which happened actually quite often. We used to wake up on, whoever was sleeping on the top bunk would wake up on the floor all the time, dude. And my grandparents tried to tell me that, you guys, you must have just fallen off the bed. I'm like, if I'm falling off a 6-foot bed, like I'd have a bruise on my head, I'd be bleeding, you know what I mean? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, it was like somebody was taking us every night and then laying us back down on the floor for us to wake up instead of back on top of our bed. And it was wild. So that experience happened. So as I grew up older, and I'm like researching all this stuff at this point in my life, like right now in this moment, I think that maybe because a lot of times that you have sleep paralysis, they're congruent with abduction experiences at the same time. A lot of people who have like abduction experiences, they talk about how they have sleep paralysis. It's like the same symptoms basically. And yeah, so I don't know if I was abducted or not, but that's what it seemed like. And at this point in my life, that's kind of the conclusion that like I got, is that maybe we're abducted in some way, because we were also during the same period for this 10-year period seeing UFOs all the time, dude. Literally all the time we were seeing UFOs in the sky. Again, if you don't look up, you'll probably never notice. You'll probably never even think about it. But if you're somebody who gazes at the stars in the sky all the time and you see strange things in the sky, like, you have a different perspective. You know what I mean? And so like part of my conclusion is that maybe we were being abducted. At the same time, I knew that it didn't seem like an extraterrestrial. It seemed like an entity, some other type of entity. And I'll give you another story. Like one night, again, because we suffered with sleep paralysis so much in our life, we had a very, very hard time going to bed, dude. We stay up for like 3-4 days in a row. Literally. We wouldn't go to bed. We played video games all night long so we wouldn't have to suffer with sleep paralysis and like deal with all that stuff. So we would just stay up. And one night I'm laying in bed. I can't sleep. And I get up and I'm like, because I got to go to the bathroom. So I go out of my room and I go into the hallway. And again, the bathroom's downstairs. Our bedroom's upstairs. You got to pass through the living room, the kitchen, and then go to the bathroom before you reach the back door. That leads to our back deck. And so it was always sketchy to go to the bathroom, and especially when you're looking at like ghost stuff all the time, you know, as a kid, and like all this stuff that's sketchy, and you're like looking into pure darkness, you know, like it's sketchy. So I get out of my bed, I go out into the hallway, I flicked on the upstairs light so that I could see a little bit going down the staircase, and I was pretty hesitant about going down because I was scared. Well, I get like halfway down, I like look over my staircase or the railing downstairs to see if anybody's there or anything's there. Nope, good to go. The moment I turn back straight to go down the rest of the staircase, at the very bottom of the staircase, dude, there's an entity there that looked just like the entity from the movie Wishmaster. And I don't know if you guys have seen that, but it's basically about a demon or the devil. And in the movie, he's green, but what I saw was he was pure red. And I'm looking at this thing consciously awake, consciously know what's going on. And I just frozen in fear, dude. And it just looks at me and it smiles. It smiles right at me with this like super evil grin.
Right.
And I'm like, nope, screw that. And I just turn around, I run back up the rest of the stairs, I get in my bed and I pull my covers over me until I end up falling asleep. And so I'm convinced that I saw what I believe to be the devil or a demon at the very least that's masquerading as something that like is popular in pop culture. You know what I mean? Because like you hear, you know, the devil's not really this dude who's like this red guy with horns and a tail and a pitchfork. You know what I mean? But I believe that he can masquerade as things like that if he wanted to. And that's what I think he did. I think that masqueraded something that I was familiar with so that I would know what I'm looking at in a way. And but yeah, like so that happened. My sister would come to us and be like, dude, I levitated in my bed last night. And we just blow it off, even though we had all these experiences. We'd be like, yeah, okay. Like, yeah, right. But she was dead serious and dead set that she had levitated in her bed multiple times when we were younger. And I don't know why we didn't believe her. It's like almost like we didn't want to believe her because we were dealing with our own thing. But we also had plenty of paranormal experiences in that house. You know, I had my brother and I used to have this kid that lived down the road. His name was George. And he used to come over all the time. He was like a brother to us. We grew up with him. You know, we'd sleep over his house. He'd sleep over our house type of thing. And we'd pull all-nighters all the time, playing video games. And at this point, like, we made a game room downstairs. And when you go past the living room, there's a back door right there that led into another room, a fourth room. And that bedroom, what was once a bedroom, we turned into a game room because my uncle used to sleep down there, you know. And we just turned into a game room when he moved out. So we'd play video games down there so we wouldn't wake our parents up. And so we had him over one night, and we had a plan to pull an all-nighter. And it was about 12 o'clock at night, and we're playing like this motocross game, you know, like this dirt biking game. And I'm playing. It's my turn to play. I look over, my brother and my buddy are fast asleep, and I was mad. I don't know why I was mad, but I was mad because we were supposed to pull an all-nighter, and I was ready to go. You know, I didn't want to go to bed, but they had passed out, and so I got all mad about it, and I went out the door and sat in the living room on the couch, and I'm sitting there pouting about it, right? And all of a sudden, I hear from the very top of my staircase upstairs, all I hear is George, 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 George. This entity or something said my buddy's name, and it echoed like 3 or 4 times, and it was so loud. And I'm wide awake, dude. Everybody else is fast asleep in my whole house. And I hear this, and I froze for a minute, and then I went back into the back room, dove underneath both of them, and just laid there until I passed out, because I was like, you know what, dude, if there's something there and it comes in, like, he's getting these guys first. You know, I was very, very selfish about it. You know what I mean? And so I had plenty of experiences. But one thing that always stuck with me, like you guys, I don't know why I had this thought, because I had no concept of what an Indian burial ground was. But I'm telling you, hundreds of times I had a passing thought growing up that our house was built on an Indian burial ground. I mean, we've found arrowheads. My grandparents, this isn't really about Native Americans, but when my grandparents were young, because they lived on that property for like 70-something years, you know, my Grammy was digging in the garden one day, and she found this glass tank. And apparently, like, they used to make these glass candy jars with tanks on them to support World War One. Right? So she found this glass tank in her yard, or in her garden. And that's something that's, like, always stuck with me, where I'm like, well, there's definitely more history to this property than I know about and that my grandparents know about, even though they've been here for like a century. You know what I mean? So it was very odd. We had tons and tons of experiences. And anyways, we dealt with that until I was like 19 years old. And at 19, I got saved. My brother and I were always on this quest for truth, went down many different paths. Like I'm telling you, we went down the New Age. We tried to conjure up, our ascended masters. We tried to astral project and all these different things. We once thought that maybe aliens were our gods. Many different paths we went down. But what was important was that we just had a heart for the truth. No matter what it ended up being, all we cared about was the truth of reality. And so when I was 19, I met this kid online, and his name is Frankie, and he won't mind that I say his name. But I started talking to him because at that point in my life, I had been on Facebook for a couple of years. I'm always preaching about the New World Order. I wasn't a Christian yet, but like he hit me up, and he was like the only one. And at this time in my life, when I'm trying to preach the truth about all these different things going on in government and the world and reality, like I felt like I was the only one doing it. Me and my brother were like the only ones. It was like anybody in a 100-mile radius just didn't care at all that, George Bush was a Skull and Bones member. They're talking about this New World Order and all this stuff and blah, blah, blah. Well, he hits me up one day and he's like, dude, he's like, I'm into all this stuff too. And he was a Christian. And I didn't know that. And we were just talking. I was telling him how big into documentaries we were. Like, we used to watch documentaries like 24/7. Didn't give a crap about other movies. Just watching documentaries all the time, learning knowledge as much as we could. And I started talking to him, and we connected, and that felt really good. And within that week that I had met him online, I had watched this movie called Zeitgeist. And at the very beginning, it takes the first 10 minutes of the whole movie, takes their time to like debunk Christianity completely. Like Jesus is just a copy of the other rising, dying and resurrecting gods, and the 12 apostles are the 12 constellations and all this stuff. And if you don't know your Bible, it's super convincing. Super convincing. It's like being in school and you know nothing about evolution, but these authority figures are teaching you about evolution, so it must be true, and so that's where I was at. I watched this movie. I'm like sharing it and spreading it everywhere, and within a week after watching that movie, my buddy hits me up, Frankie hits me up online. He goes, hey dude, do you want to hang out? And I'm like, sure dude, do you even live around me? Like, how are we gonna hang out? And he ended up only living like 20 minutes from me. And so that very same day he came over, and we're all smoking bud and hanging out and chilling, because we smoked a lot of weed back then because like we couldn't sleep, so it helped a lot with that. And dude comes over and he's like, hey, do you guys want to watch a documentary? And we're like, sure. That's like all we watch anyway, so let's do it. And so we smoked a little bit. He put on this documentary called Age of Deceit, Fallen Angels, and the New World Order. And we started watching it, dude, and every single thing that we ever were involved with or believed in that wasn't Christian at all. Yeah, I'm talking about New Age, UFOs, Alex Bailey, all that type of stuff. All of it was debunked using scripture 110%. And it took a lot of time in that documentary to completely debunk Zeitgeist that I had watched like a week earlier that he didn't even know about. He didn't even know we watched that. Right? So it takes the part where it's claiming that Christianity is Jesus' son, 12 apostles are 12 constellations. And it takes that and debunks that whole thing with scripture, like thou shalt not worship the sun, the moon, and the stars. All this stuff. And so by the very end of that documentary, we were just completely sucked in. Like, how is it, like, is this really going on? Like, everything we ever believed in is being debunked right now using scripture, which we had never read before this point. And at the very end, it preached the gospel. And my brother and I, it was like God just like took his finger and like softened our hardened hearts. Because, dude, I'm telling you, we grew up so angry. We used to do the most depraved stuff you can think about, bro. Like, we were bad, very, very bad, very, very evil. And we were obsessed with death. We were obsessed with, like, darkness completely, even though we claimed we didn't believe in God. And so, yeah, at the end of this documentary, it preaches the gospel, and it felt like God touched our hearts and opened our minds to say, hey, this is the truth of life. You've been seeking it for 19 years, for 10 years of your entire life. You've been seeking the truth. Well, here it is. Here it is. And after it preached the gospel, my brother and I just looked at each other and just started breaking down, dude. Just started crying. So hardcore. And we just, from that time on, we believed in Jesus Christ, and the word of God is true. Jesus is who he says he is. And it changed our entire life forever. And it was a beautiful, beautiful moment. But the point I want to drive home is I had sleep paralysis a couple times after that event. And now before that event, there's no way to get out of it. No way at all. You just have to let it run its course. You have to suffer through it the whole time. Okay. Well, the first time, it was probably 2 years after I got saved. The first time I ended up having sleep paralysis, I had ended up taking like an edible to help me go to bed. And I'm laying down in bed. I could feel this feeling coming on. I knew I was going to go into sleep paralysis. So I'm like, oh, here we go. Just so used to it, so ready, so able to know when it's coming upon me and that I'm going to have a bad night. That's what it felt like. So during that, dude, I ended up having sleep paralysis. And for the first like 15 minutes, I'm fighting. I'm freaking out. I don't know what to do. Blah, blah, blah. I'm just going like bummed out that I'm going through this. And then all of a sudden I had this thought in my head that said, in the name of Jesus Christ, I rebuke you. And to get off of me. And instantly, for the first time in my entire life, dude, I snapped out of sleep paralysis. I woke up out of it, was free from it. And I'm sitting up in my bed, and my bedroom door swings wide open. My bedroom door was shut, and it swings wide open. Okay, so I was convinced that something had actually left. Now, I go back to bed, all praising God, and I wake up. My brother tells me about how he was having a sleep paralysis episode, about how this goat demon was in his room. He was trying to take him. He was trying to, take my brother's soul and torture his wife. And my brother woke up in the middle of the night after I already rebuked it from my room. He ended up having a sleep paralysis attack. He wakes up. He starts rebuking things in his room. And his bedroom door swings open, and then all of a sudden, dude, me and him get up the next day. I end up bringing it up in conversation, and then he brings up his part in conversation. We're like, what the heck? That is insane. So it left my room, went to go try to attack my brother, and my brother woke up, rebuked it too, and it left our house for good. Never, ever had sleep paralysis in that house again after that moment. And he had described it as a goat demon. Like, he didn't even know what that was, bro. You look at, like, Baphomet now, right? Like, that's a typical goat demon. You know what I mean? Like, people kind of have a configuration of what that is, of who Baphomet is. They'll say it's a goat demon or whatever. And he's comparative to Satan. And so, like, he described that to me, even though I didn't see anything physically that night, even though I've seen hat men, I've seen shadow figures and all that. He told me that he saw that goat demon in his room trying to take him, his soul, and then torture his wife. And after he woke up and rebuked it, it left immediately. his door swung open, and he went back to bed after he shut his door. And so, like, after we woke up in the morning talking to each other about it, because I brought it up in conversation about my experience, he was bringing up his experience about how he got rid of it for the first time in his entire life too, and just started praising God, dude. It was like that surreal moment where, like, this whole spiritual warfare thing is so true, it's so real, and life is not what we think it is whatsoever. And that the name of Jesus Christ has power, and that his name is above all names, and he has dominion over all things. So that had changed our entire life, bro. And I don't want to drag this on because I know we're 2 hours in already, but we've had sleep paralysis moments after that, later on in our life, where we've had some crazy experiences. But again, all it took was the name of Jesus. And I'm not saying like saying it out loud with your mouth, because during that moment you can't even speak. All that comes out is air. You know, we said it in our head, our mind, and God heard us and answered our prayer. So that's that.
Yeah, it's quite a story. You went through a lot, and you found Christ in the end. These entities are real. You saw when Gary Wing called the devil goat god, your brother, and that's frightening. It really is. And I think sometimes Christ does things that just happen to people so they can wake up. I really do. And there's other realities out there that we don't see. We don't see it with our spiritual eyes. Only at times we get glimpses of it when we see things like this. And yeah, it's very important. Your testimony is very impacting. I'm sure there's a lot of other people out there who went through similar situations, and you fought through it, and you found Christ, and that's all that matters. And man, that was powerful, dude. That was good. That was good testimony.
Yeah, man. I know it's late. I know that everybody has to go. One thing I want to say before we do dip is that, for me personally and my brother, a lot of people know about the New World Order, right? And they still reject Christ. Well, I feel like because we were into all that stuff and exposing all that stuff from a young age before we ever knew Christ, like the documentary that we had watched, we were almost saved by the meat or in the midst of the meat. You know what I mean? It wasn't just the gospel. It was like everything convinced us through the gospel, because we had already known about the New World Order and all this stuff. And this documentary had connected it to theistic Satanists who run the world. You know what I mean? Like conspiracies and secret societies and all that stuff. You know what I mean? Like it connected it all back to the word of God, which we didn't have prior. We knew they existed. We just didn't ever connect it back to the word. So I think that's something that has always helped us. And one thing that I always say is that those who are involved with like conspiracy or the meat of the word of God, it's important to always go back to the milk. You know, like you can't just eat meat your entire life and be involved with these conspiracies and expose them all the time. Like sometimes it's important and necessary to go back to the milk, the simple, simplistic word of God about, Christ dying for us and rising for us and what he did in his atonement. I think that's very important. Even a child could understand that and what he did for us. So I think that people like you and me, those who are kind of running the same circles, who are just completely, into conspiracies and stuff like that, just don't ever forget to go back, take a break sometimes, go back and just drink the milk, because that milk will help you wash down everything else. You know what I mean? I think that's very important, because I think there are people who choke and they end up going down wrong paths, and they end up getting into Gnosticism or, the New Age or any of that stuff, like they forget about the simplicity of the gospel.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that.
Well, thank you, man, for coming on. Just want to say thanks for listening to all that. I know it's been a long time, so I appreciate it, man. If there's anything else you want to say before we get off of here, go for it.
No, that's pretty much it. I enjoyed your testimony.
Yes, sir. Me too.
It was really good, and we have another show to do. I presume here in the near future, right?
Yeah. We got plenty of shows coming up here. And we want to have you guys back on again to talk about some other stuff that we know that you guys are pretty familiar with. So
Absolutely, brother. Just hit us up.
All right, we'll do, man. You guys have a good night, and thank you so much.
Buddy, God bless you in Jesus' name. Thank you again for having us on.
Thank you, Joe.
No problem.
God bless you all.
Bye-bye.
God bless. Bye-bye.